We'd like to call this evening's meeting of the Peoria City Council to order. Welcome Kathy Reinerson and her listening audience at WCVU is Cable Channel 22. Madam Clerk, the council microphones are open for roll call.
Mayor Artis.
Here.
Councilmember Ali. Councilmember Sear. Councilmember Grayeb.
Here.
Councilmember Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember Kelly.
Here.
Councilmember Montalongo. Councilmember Moore.
Here.
Councilmember Euler. Councilmember Riggenbach.
Here.
And Councilmember Ruckriegel.
Here.
You have a quorum present, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'd like to invite everyone to join us and stand for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. We'd also like to ask everybody to keep the Manius family in their prayers this week. As we all know, Angela Manius, who is a longtime business person and just great person in the community, passed this past weekend. They have services this week, and we'd really like just to ask everyone to keep their family in your prayers. We have a couple proclamations this evening, and we're going to start with the 80th anniversary of the Peoria Medical Society Alliance. Whereas for the last 80 years, the Peoria Medical Society Alliance has remained committed in promoting the health, education, and the quality of life for the people of the Peoria community. And whereas the Peoria Medical Society Alliance pledges its loyalty and devotion to the Illinois State Medical Association Alliance, supports its activities, protects its reputation, and ever sustains its high ideal. And whereas the Peoria Medical Society also invests in the future by awarding promising students with scholarships to continue their education in the healthcare field. Now, therefore, I, Jim Artis, Mayor of the City of Peoria, do hereby acknowledge the 80th anniversary of the Peoria Medical Society Alliance in Peoria, Illinois. And we're going to get a little more information here, so stay tuned.
Thank you, Mayor Artis and City Council. We're very grateful for the proclamation recognizing our 80 years of service and giving in the Peoria community. We have approximately 125 members currently, and we continue to give countless hours of volunteer work through all different organizations in the community, all different age groups, and we continue to raise funds, which we share with organizations and nonprofits in the Peoria area. So thank you very much. Thank you.
And now we would like to recognize the folks that are here for the Year of the Guitar.
Little back. Thank you.
Whereas the year 2020 marks the Year of the Guitar, when partners in the arts and education communities highlight the role that the guitar plays in the performing arts. And whereas the Year of the Guitar will showcase this multifaceted instrument in a variety of ways. Through live solo performances at the library, or live dance at the Peoria Civic Center, or expressed through art at area galleries, the Year of the Guitar will provide numerous opportunities to enjoy Peoria's rich entertainment offerings that center around the guitar. And whereas residents and visitors can note the various events by following the Year of the Guitar Facebook page, and whereas this celebration would not be possible without the collaboration between the Peoria Riverfront Museum, Peoria Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Peoria Civic Center, the Peoria Park District, the Peoria Public Library, and WTVP. Now, therefore, I, Jim Ardis, Mayor of the City of Peoria, do hereby acknowledge 2020 as the Year of the Guitar in Peoria, Illinois. We have representatives from all of the groups that I just mentioned, but I believe that our Assistant City Manager, Deborah Rattler, is going to be the spokesperson. Welcome.
So this is an open collaboration, the first of its kind in the city of Peoria, and we are so excited about what this offers, not just our institutions of art, but our everyday citizens and art lovers in the city. The Year of the Guitar is not just about Joe Bonamassa coming to town, which, by the way, I'm very excited about. It's also about the person who owns a gym and decides they're going to do a guitar-themed spin ride on Friday, which I'm hoping that my gym will do soon. And so this is an effort to really help Peorians and folks in the area understand the vibrancy that already exists. This is us helping us see our own story. And the truth of the matter is that we are a remarkable arts community. The Peoria Year of the Guitar is the beginning of telling that story through the eyes of the guitar. So I can't wait to see what else this year brings, all of the surprises that are going to happen, because when artists get together, there are surprises. And did anyone else have anything to say? Oh, gosh. Wow. Okay. And I'm looking forward to seeing what this year will bring. Peoria 2020, the Year of the Guitar. Thank you.
Start with the meeting. I have an announcement that I need to make. This is a notice to our township electors pursuant to Public Act 095-0761. If you desire to have an item considered on the agenda at the annual town meeting to be held Tuesday, April 14th, 2020 at 6 p.m., you are required to bring a specific request signed by 15 or more electors to the clerk no later than March 1st. Any group of registered voters may request an advisory question of public policy for consideration by the electors at the annual meeting by giving written notice of the specific advisory question to the township clerk in the same manner as required for an agenda item under subsection B of section 30-10 of the Township Code. This is required reading. This is not our public act. This is just an act that we're required to read for anyone that would like to be involved in those. If you need more information, our clerk would be glad to give it to you. Councilmember Reck-Regal.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the joint City Council and Town Board meeting held on February 11th, 2020, and a special City Council meeting held on February 18th as printed.
Seconded by Councilmember Graham. Are there any corrections or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at the consent agenda. 20-046 is a request to approve the following dates for scheduled events sponsored by Peoria Area Community Events, subject to their filing the necessary permits and approval as required by the City Code. The first event would be Louisville Slugger Attendee Appreciation, the Taste of Peoria, Labor Day Picnic, Backyard Barbecue, and the Brew and Boo in October. 20-047 is a request to approve payment in the amount of $9,900 to VRG Property Companies for right-of-way acquisition for a portion of 1037 South Western Avenue for the proposed Western Avenue Improvement Project. 20-048 is a request for the following. A is to adopt an ordinance amending the City of Peoria 2020 to 2021 biennial budget relating to the general fund in the amount of $38,232 to recognize the purchase of a 2020 Ford Transit 350 cargo van and the corresponding funding from federal asset forfeiture funds. And B is to approve the purchase from Landmark Ford for this vehicle in the amount of $38,232, utilizing the State of Illinois Joint Purchasing Contract. 20-049 has a handout on yellow on your desk, and it's an email that includes pricing for this item. And this is a request to approve and authorize the execution of a 3-year contract with Dingus Fire equipment for fire turnout gear to be ordered as needed. 20-050 is a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt an ordinance rezoning property from the present Class R6 multifamily residential district to a Class R3 single-family residential district for property at 6847 North Allen Road. 20-051 is a request to approve the site application for a Class D hotel liquor license with on-site consumption and retail sale of alcohol at PMO Incorporated DBA Grand Stay Hotel and Suites at 9106 North Lindbergh with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve. 20-052 is a request to approve the site application for a Class B restaurant 50% food liquor license with on-site consumption and retail sale of alcohol at WFFD Ventures LLC DBA Weaver's Fresh Food and Drink at 7301 North Radnor Road with a recommendation from the Liquor Commission to approve. And 20-053 is a request to receive and file a report from the Illinois Department of Transportation titled Documentation Review Number 72. And that completes your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Any items to remove from consent this evening? Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 20-047, please.
047. Councilmember Sear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 20-053.
053. Thank you. Any other items to remove from consent? Seeing none, we have a motion to approve the remaining items. Councilman Greb, seconded Councilman Regenbach. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
20-047 is the request of payment to VRG Property Companies for the portion of 1037 Southwestern Avenue.
Councilmember Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps I didn't read this fully or didn't understand it fully, but this is a temporary easement, and I'm wondering, it's a much larger piece of property. Am I not coming across?
It's on.
Okay. This piece of property is a rather large piece of property, it seems to me, according to the map, along Western Avenue. and but it's a temporary easement. And Mr. Manager, can you explain why it's temporary or what's going on there exactly?
I'll defer to the construction easement to the Public Works Director. There is a purchase of 175 square feet, a small portion of the property that we are purchasing as part of the permanent right. So there's two pieces of this. There's a small purchase of right-of-way, and then there's the temporary construction easement. And I'll let the Director explain why we would need that temporary easement.
Yeah, I think that's where I got confused, so.
I think I'm just on. The temporary easement allows us to actually work in that area during the project. It's basically there. It's an easement for us to work on that, what would normally be private property, and alleviates us from the liability to work in the easement while construction activity is taking place.
This is a property that does not have a structure on it, so if we're parking construction vehicles or things, this allows us to utilize their property.
That's what I was after. I just figured this is some sort of a outdoor storage area or something for the project.
That's correct. We normally it's
then-
for construction activity
And then
during the project.
Then we'll give it back.
That's correct.
Except for that bit of
Basically
right-of-way.
for the actual sidewalk construction.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Councilmember Jensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question about the cost. Was the property appraised? Because it seems quite high for $9,900 for a portion of that, a small portion of that piece of property that's vacant and in the location that it is.
I believe the property was appraised. It was done through a consulting firm, and that is a part of the contract relative to services provided, is that they would provide appraisals.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions on this item? Motion to approve. Councilman Kelly?
I so move.
So moved and seconded by Councilmember Moore. Seeing no further lights, please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
Item 20-053 is the request to receive and file the IDOT report regarding documentation review number 72.
Councilmember Sear.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There's just not enough details for me in this item, and I ask Director Scroggin to maybe take a minute and explain to all of us a little bit more details about this item. Thank you.
Councilman, what you have in front of you is a report that we received from the Illinois Department of Transportation, document review number 72. What this report entails is a reconciliation between the Department of Transportation's records and the city's records. Their auditor did it internally, provided this, requested that we have it brought forward to the council and receive and file. Anticipate that you'll receive another one that will bring 2017 to 2019 shortly. Then we'll be current. As you can see, this report's quite a big gap. They didn't have an auditor for a long time, so there was nobody doing the review. The review also, on their end, makes sure that all the MFT resolutions and authorizations and everything are followed correctly, and they're applying it correctly too. So it just basically reconciles both of our records.
Anticipate this report being an annual report eventually?
I would have to confirm that with the IDOT auditor, because right now the person who's doing this for them is a contract employee as well. She actually retired and came back to help get caught up again. But yes, I would anticipate that we will be doing it more quarterly, semi-annually with them, and not waiting to 9 years to get it done again.
Thank you very much, sir. Move to receive and file, Mr. Mayor.
Motion to approve, seconded Councilman Kelly. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing no lights, please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk?
We're at first readings. 20-054 is a request to receive and file a first reading review of an ordinance amending Appendix A, the Unified Development Code, relating to setbacks along thoroughfares.
Thank you. Director Black.
Thank you, Mayor. This item makes an amendment to a long-standing and frequently waived requirement within the city ordinance. As some of you will remember, some of the more recent requests for a waiver of this were from some gas stations in town. We've had requests for waivers on Prospect Avenue. Effectively, this was put in place back in the 1950s, and it requires that any development within 100 feet of the center line of the major streets in Peoria provide a waiver so that if the city or the state ever needed that land, then the owner of the property would pay to remove whatever was built in there. Because the thought at the time was that roadways should be 200 feet wide. Well, obviously that's not the case. We never ended up there, and that's not the direction that we're heading. And so we see a lot of waivers that come through asking for relief from this requirement, and in every case when a waiver is brought to the city council, it's been granted. So in consultation with the public works staff in terms of what a more reasonable number is, we decided that 60 feet was a reasonable number. So now what the requirement would state, if adopted by the council, is that the setback has to be 60 feet from the center line or 25 feet from the property line, whichever is greater. So it allows for a little bit more flexibility for the development community, but it also provides protection for the city if we ever actually did need some additional right-of-way.
And then it's going to change to an administrative process too, correct?
Yes, I'm sorry, Mayor. That is the other part. Instead of waivers coming to the city council for approval, is these are technical, or generally technical reviews. Whether we need the land or we don't need the land, then the waiver process would go through the city staff instead of to the city council.
Thank you. Any questions for Director Black on this? Seeing none, I would accept a motion to receive and file. Councilman Regenbach, seconded by Councilman Ruckriegel. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We're at regular business. 20-055 is a request to approve a resolution to increase the compensation of the city manager by $4,828 to be allocated as a bonus salary increase, deferred compensation, or any combination as deemed appropriate by the city manager.
Councilman Regenbach.
For the approval.
Seconded by Councilmember Graeb. Is there discussion on this item? Councilman Graeb, did you have a comment on this? Just second. Okay, thank you. Seeing no lights, please cast your ballots. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
20-056 is a request to adopt an ordinance amending the City of Peoria 2020 to 2021 biennial budget relating to the use of the general fund balance to provide funding to subsidize the discount on the purchase of home camera security equipment in the amount of $29,400.
Councilman Montalongo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, what you have in front of you is this request to bring forward from last year's ring event. The amount is $29,400. That was the balance remaining. As you may recall, last year we approved $50,000 to be used towards an event with ring where the city was putting in $50,000, matching ring $50. So approximately 1,000 cameras would be sold into the community last year. That's what our hope was. We had a one-day event with Ring at Northwoods Mall. It was very well attended by our residents. In that one half-day event that we had, approximately 400 cameras were sold. So we did a very good job in just 4 hours. So we have a remaining balance, and what I'm asking is to bring that from last year to this year. So with that, I'd like to move for approval.
Motion to approve. Is there a second? Seconded by Councilman Kelly. Discussion on this item. Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to make sure that Ring is in for the split with us as they were last year.
So Ring has discontinued their program, so they're no longer providing the additional $50 discount and along with us. So what staff is working on at Councilmember Monsalongo's request is to come back with a policy that would be just a $50 incentive that we would pay to residents that purchase and install a home camera system, and then it would be verified probably through the police department. We're working out ironing out those details right now. We'll have the policy back in front of council at our next meeting here.
Okay. That's what I thought. I was wondering whether there is a way to, if Ring is no longer participating financially in this, whether other doorbell camera systems could qualify for this $50 subsidy by the city.
That's correct. What we would look to do is really to be one vendor agnostic, so to speak, and we would work with whoever may be out there that has a camera system in place. We would actually be working with the purchaser of the camera, not the companies themselves.
Okay, and we're going to see this later on.
We'll come back to you with a policy before any dollars are expended. They'll be back with a policy for you to approve.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Item 19-278, there is a yellow handout on your desk, and the substitute ordinances are changing the Class O to MT. So this item is a request to consider two draft ordinances pertaining to Chapter 3 of the Code of the City of Peoria to allow movie theaters to sell alcohol.
Perhaps just to get us started, I'd ask Corporation Counsel maybe just to give us, for the listening audience especially, just a little bit more information on the two ordinances that we're considering.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In November, representatives of AMC and Goodrich approached the Liquor Commission and proposed the idea of moving toward the ability to sell alcohol in movie theaters. Currently, only the Riverfront Museum is the only existing movie theater that is allowed to sell alcohol. So in working with them and talking to the Liquor Commission on best practices, we tried to draft a couple of options for your consideration. Option A, I will tell you, is generally the one that the industry believes is more workable for them, and it has some safeguards in place as far as single serving size containers, limits on the number of drinks, but it does allow a patron to purchase those drinks in the lobby area. Option B is slightly more restrictive. It requires almost an in-house restaurant where the patron would be seated and a server would be required to bring the drink or alcohol directly to the person that is seated. Option C is obviously to just say no to the concept at all, but for discussion purposes, we provided these two ordinances to get started.
Thank you very much. Councilman Sear.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion, just move to approve option A of this ordinance, please.
Okay. Motion to approve option A, seconded by Councilmember Ruckriegel. Discussion. Councilmember Gribb.
I would like option C, Mr. Manager. Option C is neither of the above at this time. And I really feel strongly that when our families go to movie theaters, they really want to buy popcorn and maybe some soft drinks and maybe a hot dog. And I don't think that we can compare what we're being asked to do with what they do in some cities like Chicago. We're being asked to just simply allow alcoholic beverages to be sold in our theaters, period. apparently the business model, which would be involved in B, having an actual restaurant, theater, with alcohol being served, isn't something they're even contemplating. That'd be far less of a problem for me than what's being proposed. I believe you have a problem here with supervision. One of our biggest issues in this community is the abuse of alcohol. And I just don't see this as being something that's in the best interest of the movie theaters or our families who go to the movie theaters. And so at this time, I would support neither of these, especially since I'm hearing that the movie industry representatives who are here aren't even interested in entertaining doing B. And I have seen B done very well in large cities where they have reclining chairs, where food is brought out, and it's not just simply alcohol being served. It's like a restaurant, theater, bar. And I just think that makes more sense and cushions the impact of people drinking alcohol if you actually have a restaurant involved at the same time. So, but they don't appear to want to do that. That's not within their business model. So as far as I'm concerned, if they're not interested in doing B, I have to be for C. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Ali.
Thank you, Mayor Artis. Last time around, I took the position of not supporting option A, and I still don't support option A. I would prefer an option B because it's similar to what's happening at Landmark, where they have the bar that's a closed area where you can buy food, and then they have the movie theater where you can't buy alcohol at the stands that you buy popcorn. There's a lot of children, many times unsupervised teenagers, that hang out at the movie theaters. Parents are comfortable sending their children many times to the movie theater. I don't like the idea of mixing the alcohol with the family atmosphere. I think that it will create many problems within our movie theaters. So if option B is not a real option, not a real interest, then I lean toward option C as well. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this item? Maybe just a real quick one for the Corporation Council. I noticed the communication obviously identifies the fact that the Peoria Riverfront Museum currently has the ability to sell alcohol similar to item A. I'm assuming that that was just put in there to say we do have a theater that does this. I would like to just comment that I think there's a lot of differences between Peoria Riverfront Museum and the multi-screen theaters. It's a single screen, one event, has a tendency to be a lot of family events down there, so there's adult supervision and so on. So I appreciate the fact that the PRM theater was listed as an example, but it's, in my opinion at least, it's kind of comparing apples and oranges, just for the record. Councilman Sear was next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last time around, or first time around, I was against the having alcohol in theaters, but after doing a lot of research and talking to attorneys from Chicago and other cities and some of my colleagues around this horseshoe, and most importantly, after talking to my constituent, because in the 5th District, we have 2 of those theaters are right here in the 1st District. Business is declining everywhere, and they have, we all know about what's happening to big boxes around the country and around Peoria. These also are 2 big boxes, and with leases that they have 2 or 3 years left on those leases. And to me, I think having theaters in the 5th District and in the city of Peoria really add to the quality of life, and I want to give them an opportunity. I mean, I'm not excited about that business plan that they have, but I think I want to give them a chance to make it in Peoria, because I know that my wife and I are moviegoers, and business has been declining. They're trying to get some of these adults back to the theater, and I just don't want to see any more empty boxes, especially in the 5th District. I think I owe them an opportunity anyway to maybe increase their sales in a responsible way. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on that, because I'm a moviegoer, but I have to. That's why I've changed my mind, and I want to support this ordinance. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I had Councilman Kelly next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, am I out of order if I have questions about, since we're talking about option A, if I have questions about option B?
No, you're fine with that.
Okay. Is the staff aware of any of these theaters who are looking to utilize the option B, that is a restaurant, movie, liquor combo, as far as we know?
Sir, both of the representatives at the Liquor Commission on behalf of AMC and Goodrich were clear that that was a business model that they did not think would work. One of the explanations they gave was the cost to retrofit the theaters to be able to install ordering equipment, since they were existing theaters and not newly built theaters.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had Councilmember Moore next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have a question, Mr. City Manager or Corporation Counsel. If this item is approved tonight, would an organization still have to go through the site approval process through the Liquor Commission? And then that would then come again to the City Council for us to determine whether we would approve it or not. So today we're just adding a line item to our liquor license options, but it is not saying to anyone in the city or any organization in the city that they would be approved. They could still not be approved because it still has to come before us for site approval by the council. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Jensen is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support option A and the change to this ordinance. I think it's important that we support the theaters that we already have that are existing in the city. And as Councilman Sear pointed out, they are struggling, and this, they believe, will help keep people coming to the theaters. I myself have attended movies at theaters all over in different areas, not just in Peoria, where they are serving alcohol, and there's kids around, but it's run fine. I've never had any concerns about it. We often go to the movies at the Riverfront Museum and have a beer while we watch the movie, and we have our kids there, and there are other kids there. So I think based on the testimony of the attorney that was here several months ago when we talked about it, I'm comfortable with the procedures that they have in place to ensure that the alcohol is served in a responsible manner, and that people are carded. I think they're given, and Corporation Counsel might have to help me out, I think they're given wristbands or different colored cups.
The cups are different colors from soda or water, and wristbands was actually a hot topic at the Liquor Commission, whether or not those should be required. And the industry folks actually discouraged those because they felt that the onus should really be on their bartenders to check every single time somebody came to the counter to order alcohol, and they felt like their bartenders, once somebody had been given a wristband, weren't necessarily checking the second time when somebody came back. So removal of wristbands was actually at their request.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to support this. I hope the majority of the council does. I think it's important that we support our businesses that are here in Peoria, and I think that this is a good way to go. Thank you.
I had Councilman Ruckriegel next.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, this industry is changing, and I think I may be the only one actually around the horseshoe here who actually has experience in the movie operations experience, going back almost 20 years. And one of the things that I think is not really known about the industry a lot is the fact that when blockbusters come out, most of the ticket sales goes off to some other city, off to Hollywood. And so movie theaters have to make it on the concessions. And movie theaters can't operate on not having the concessions. And in a growing industry where even in small towns, this is not a big town that this is only happening in. And I went back over the past couple of weeks and looked at towns where this was passing in small towns as well. And it's an industry change. I think it's interesting, too, that our 5th District Council member talked about the big box stores. And I think that there we see some changes that were happening in the industry that other communities didn't really foresee as happening as quickly as they did. And I think that what we've come up here today in option A is a good, happy medium to be able to allow the theater owners to be able to operate in a very business-like manner, to have the control of this. But there's something in here that a lot of ordinances don't have, and that's a 2-drink minimum or 2-drink maximum. So there is a limit there. Now, a lot of times what happens in these theaters is once the movie starts, you don't really come out for another drink because I think the average is slightly over 1 drink that most people get if they do partake, and very few partake. But we've actually put another safeguard in here, which was the 2-drink. That combined with the fact that at any time, while we can grant the license, we can also take the license back. And I think that's an important piece because we have the ability through our liquor commission to be able to regulate which theaters have this option and which ones don't. And so I think that in talking with the theater owners, the theater representatives, they are going to take this very serious to make for sure that they do the right thing so that they, if they're granted that option, continue to have that option and it's not pulled back. So I will be supporting my 5th District Council member and appreciate all his work on this.
Councilman Grabe next.
Am I to understand, Corporation Counsel, that if A were to pass tonight, that if Landmark approached the city, happens to be in my district, Landmark Theaters, that we would have to give site approval for Landmark?
Correct.
It seems strange to me that Landmark Theaters does such a good job and attracts so many families and seniors, and they even allow infinite number of refills of popcorn. And yet the theaters out in the far north part of our city are struggling unless they can serve alcohol. And then, as the mayor points out, we have the commentary in the course of this particular council communique that Riverfront Museum does it. Well, how many theaters are we talking about supervision if we allow it to the north and eventually to the south? How many different areas have to be supervised versus this? It's a different venue entirely. We also allow alcohol to be served at the Civic Center, but it's a different animal entirely. So if you approve this tonight, I guess you're just saying conceptually we think that it's okay to do it, but we're not quite sure if we're going to authorize it at a given location unless there is a request made from the owners, the proprietors of a particular location, let's say Goodrich Theater, etc. So that's my understanding, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So actually, tonight, I guess we're half pregnant. Is that right, if we approve this?
Yes.
That's what Councilman Sandberg used to say, and I used to appreciate that. So we're going down the road. We've opened the door, folks. I can't wait because the people in the 2nd District are going to have something to say about it. They've already communicated with me about it. But maybe they're different than the people in District 5. I don't know. I will say Councilor Ali absolutely hit the ball out of the park when she mentioned the fact that this was an experiment a number of years ago at Landmark Theaters. They had an art series, and they were allowing, at some of those events, alcohol to be served. It was strictly limited. It was not a carte blanche approval for all their movie theaters. And After a period of time, it was no longer being done. Apparently, it wasn't that important for their business model. So, I almost feel like violins ought to be gotten out, and we ought to be talking about how we're going to drive the movie theaters into the ground if we don't approve this tonight. Really? Seriously? I don't buy that. I think that's desperate. And for that reason, I would say option C, unless, of course, they were interested in option B. And they apparently are here tonight, but they don't want to comment on option B. Is that right?
I think Mr. Anderson could comment exactly for AMC.
I'd like to hear it.
Seeing no objections, Mr. Anderson, we just need your name and your firm representing.
Certainly. My name is Rob Anderson from the Barr Anderson Law Group. I represent AMC Theaters. Heath Thomas, who represents Goodrich Theaters, could not be here tonight. He did, though, give me some comments on this issue of option B. It's not that we are not interested in an option B, it's that we have tried option B in other locations, and given the, again, I'm speaking for AMC, given the revenue numbers and attendance numbers, option B would just not be financially workable for us here. There are two sides to that coin. The first is from AMC's side. The costs of adding in the upgrades for a full dine-in theater, adding in the additional employees, aren't supported by the current numbers, again, in terms of revenue and attendance that we see here. And then also from a customer side, when these types of upgrades go in, they increase costs for customers, for ticket sales, for concessions, things like that. We have actually done previously option B in other towns, and in the vast majority of those towns outside of, say, Chicago, those are all being shut down. We have a theater located in Rosemont, Illinois, which had a full dine-in experience, both a sit-down restaurant and a bring-it-to-your-seat type operation, and it was just not financially viable. That entire process has been shut down there, and it's just an option A type of operation.
In our memo, we like to talk about Chicago doing it. Gee, I've been to a theater in the Loop where the business model seems to be working there. It's just not raw liquor. There has to be food served at the same time. Seems to be working there. So I don't know. It just depends on what business model we're talking about. I'm thinking about Peoria business model and the families that like to go to theaters and the supervision aspect that is involved that I think is very difficult for us to navigate. And I'm sorry that you can't make B work in Peoria. I can't believe that it'll work in other parts of the country, but not in Peoria, if given a chance. But anyway, thank you very much for coming. We're not anti-business, but we are for doing what we think is best for our constituents. And I enjoyed your presentation last time. I just happened to disagree about it. But, you're doing what you should do, and I'm doing what I think I should do. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Ruckriegel.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess a procedure question for our Corporation Council. Since these seem to be draft ordinances, are we able to vote on those tonight, or do we need to make a motion to bring those ordinances back at our next meeting?
Because it appeared on the agenda, it would be your pleasure. We could certainly bring it back, or you could proceed with a reading of one of those tonight.
Great. So we're able to proceed tonight. Thank you.
Yes.
Councilmember Ali.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mayor Artis. I just wanted to point out, I don't have any questions for you, Mr. Anderson, but I just wanted to point out that Councilman Sear is not the only council member that lives in the 5th District. And I also live in the 5th District, and I've heard from a good number of residents within the 5th District that adamantly oppose option A. So I don't want it to appear that this is a 5th District resident support just because Councilman Sear recommended it. So I'm voting no.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing no further lights until I have Councilman Montalongo. Thank you.
Snuck that in there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Question for Corporation Council, I guess, where we're at right now. Could we give this like a year period of time just to see how this works out?
We could put a sunset provision on it, yes.
And we could bring that back. So did I understand correctly? We're going to bring this back and vote on it again?
If you move forward with the motion that's on the floor, then this would be the first reading of the ordinance.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we have a motion and a second to accept ordinance A, option A. Please cast your ballots. The motion passes with 8 ayes and 2 noes. Voting no, council members Ali and Gribb. Madam Clerk.
20-026 is a request to concur with a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission and staff to adopt ordinance A, B, or C, all amending Appendix A, the Unified Development Code relating to truck parking.
Well, Director Black, it seems like we've talked about this at every meeting for the last 2 months. So,
one more meeting and we'll be at ordinance D.
okay.
So this item has been before you before a couple of times. The last conversation with council, the council seemed comfortable with limited truck parking, Class 2 truck parking, as a permitted use in industrial districts. However, you wanted to see truck parking in commercial districts, in the large-scale commercial districts, the C2 districts, come before the council as a special use, so you were able to decide if it was appropriate for those commercial districts. So Ordinance C sets that in place, that truck parking would be permitted in the I-1, I-2, and I-3 districts, would be a special use in the C2 district. In terms of the conditions, they remain the same as the last time this ordinance was before you, that the initial review would be by the staff, by the Development Review Board. Each application would require a site plan that delineates parking areas and includes directional signage. The Development Review Board will consider safety, lighting, circulation, pedestrian paths, buffering from noise and air pollution on every site. The number of Class 2 vehicles at any location would be limited to 5, and the amount of time that any vehicle could remain parked at that location is 72 hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Director Black or motion? Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thank you, Director Black, for bringing back Ordinance C, and I move to approve Ordinance C.
We have a motion to approve C. Is there a second? Councilman Rodrigo. Councilman Jensen, did you have any?
No, I think this addresses the concerns I raised. I think allowing it in the industrial districts as a permitted use makes sense, but I would like to have anyone who's seeking to do truck parking in a C2 district come to the city to request a special use, so they get approval for each specific site.
Okay, thank you. All right, Councilman Kelly next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Black, as I look, thank you for preparing this map, by the way. It's very easy, except what on this map is a location? In other words, we have a number of commercial districts, lots of little lines inside the commercial districts, which I suppose are different parcels. And is that what a location is, or is it that entire, say, shopping center, regardless of how many parcels are in there?
So the special use, yes, you are correct. The lines on the map that are within each one of the red areas would be the individual parcels. So if you look at the area that's designated, for example, as Sheridan Village, Evergreen Square, Metro Center, then those are clearly different commercial areas. However, they are all contiguous to each other, and so just for clarity purpose, it was easier to put them all into one grouping. If someone came in for a request for this, it would be by parcel. And in most cases for the shopping centers, it's a special use for shopping centers. So there may be 2 or 3 different parcels within that, but it's one location. So maybe an example, Northwoods Mall is effectively one parcel. So that's one parcel. Sheridan Village is one parcel. Evergreen Square is one parcel.
Sorry, Mr. You mean one location? There's a bunch of parcels, I think, in those.
Yes, both. It's one location for the purpose of most of these large shopping centers, even though they are multiple parcels. Some of them are only one, but some of them are multiple parcels. From a zoning standpoint, we consider it, not to go too far in the weeds, we consider that a zoning lot. So for all intent and purpose, we consider it one parcel.
One location, right? I mean, I think the ordinance speaks to location, not parcel. Am I correct? Are you saying that at Northwoods Mall, there are a bunch of parcels there, okay? But as far as the ordinance is concerned, that's one location.
Just to use Northwoods Mall. Northwoods Mall is, and I'm trying to picture it right now, I believe there are 3 parcels that make up Northwoods Mall. And from a zoning standpoint, the word location is typically not used. We would consider the parcels that make up Northwoods Mall to be one location, if that helps.
Yes, that does. Thank you.
And Councilmember Moore next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Director, the only thing that that changed from last meeting to this meeting is that the commercial areas are now special use. Is that correct? So am I to assume that the rest of the ordinance applies to the industrial areas as well? The damage or inoperated vehicles prohibited, no person shall allow or cause to be blown any horns, those kinds of things. Is that applicable also to the industrial areas?
Yes, ma'am. In the body of the memo, one of the questions the last time this was before the council was a question of what are some of the general nuisance ordinances that are already in place that would apply to this type of use. And so we listed those in the body of the memo because we're not asking you to adopt these as new ordinances because they already exist on the books. So the answer is yes. These are generally applicable to any parcel, any location, anywhere in town.
So let's say that, and the reason I'm asking this question is on our map, most of the industrial areas are in the 1st district, in my district. So let's say at 1 o'clock in the morning, somebody is, some trucker is there and there's got engine and exhaust that's just choking everybody who drives down that street. Is the remedy then for some resident who may be adjacent to that area to call the police? And if the answer is yes, will they know that this is something that is not that is not something that's available for them to do in that area? I'm just wondering what happens at 2 in the morning because we shut down here at 5 o'clock.
If someone has a complaint about noise or fumes or anything else, in after hours, they should call the non-emergency dispatch number, and a police officer would be sent to that location. And my experience is that police officers do know and will take care of these items.
And I just wanted to confirm for the industrial areas also that there is a limit of 5 vehicles and there's a 72-hour park limit.
Correct.
Thank you.
And maybe once again, I want to point out, this is for the parking of trucks that are not associated with a business on that location. So if there's a trucking business, and that's where they keep their trucks, that's a different issue.
And if someone has a property in the industrial areas and they want to avail themselves to do this, do they need a permit or register with the city or anything like that?
They do need to come through the administrative review process and provide a site plan showing where the parked trucks would be, where the signage would be, and all of the other requirements that are in the ordinance. The only difference between the industrial districts and the commercial district in terms of really, there are no differences in terms of performance measures. The only difference is that in the commercial districts, it requires approval by the city council. In the industrial districts, it can be approved administratively.
And would they come to the second floor of City Hall, to the Community Development Department, to request that availability?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had Councilman Grave next.
Well, at the risk of appearing to be anti-business, I can tell you one thing. The people in my district don't like seeing semi-tractor trailer trucks in their neighborhoods. And I think this is how a lot of this regulation got started, because of all the complaints we were getting from neighborhoods. And I can't believe that it's just people in District 2 that were unhappy with this. But I guess I need a little more information. And Director Black, you and your staff done an excellent job giving us our options on this. But let's just say there's a desire to have the semi-tractor trailer trucks parked. I'm just picking this one out because my district is nearby, right across the street. Sterling Bazaar. Who would be the petitioner asking for the special use? In other words, how does this get going that we're allowing some of these red zones to be permitted uses, or special uses, I'm sorry?
The petitioner would have to be the owner of the property.
Okay. So in other words, somebody who has a semi-tractor trailer truck cannot understand what we're doing tonight is saying, oh, these red areas are where I can go ahead and park. Right now, basically, we're saying it's okay only in the industrial area, railroad, warehouse, general industrial. Is that right?
Well, assuming that the council adopts this, that's not even what is being said. What's being said is that in the industrial districts, it could be permitted, but only after the owner of the property submits a site plan and shows where the trucks will be and where the signage will be, and the staff has an opportunity to make sure that there's no negative impact on the surrounding properties. In the commercial districts, it's the same thing, except there's the additional step of it going through a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission with the notices sent out to all of the adjacent property owners, and then a final decision made by the City Council.
Director Black, one of the reasons we are at this point tonight where we're even having this discussion is because Peoria has been the wild, wild west as relates to where these would be parked. We've had no area designated. That seems to me to be very anti-business because they have to go somewhere. We don't have a Love's nearby, although, manager, I think you should start working on that. I mentioned that last time. So this is an attempt to manage this. So we have a balance between the requirements and the needs of the neighborhood and for that matter, businesses, because a lot of goods are taken to market via truck, and we don't want to be anti-business, that's for sure. So what you're doing is you're allowing petitioners in more than just these industrial areas to come forth and petition in some of our more commercial areas, even though some of the commercial areas actually may be right across the street from residential areas as I look at this. Okay, as long as we understand what we're getting into, I think it's better than what we've had, which is saying, you know, you can't park legally anywhere in Peoria, and they did it anyway. So I think this is a step forward. Thank you, Director, for your work, hard work on this, and your staff.
I had Councilmember Sear next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Director Black, I had a conversation with you after the last meeting when we discussed this map. I mean, I'm very concerned for my district. There's 3 or 4 large areas in my district. The main concern is, as my colleague just said, I mean, I don't want to see trucks, van being lost. You know, I got a couple roundabouts. We all have a lot of subdivisions. I mean, tell me a little bit about traffic and signs. I mean, I know hopefully all these trucks have GPS, but I'm concerned about, because I have received calls in the past where all of a sudden there's a truck going through the lost. Somebody got lost and is going through a roundabout. How will we be able to eliminate some of that? Can we do that? And as I said, as I talked to you before, I mean, especially the industrial park. I mean, we've got a lot of room there. But owners of the building, I just want to make sure, I think you said that already. The owners will have to apply for a permit, correct?
Correct. The owner of the property needs to be the applicant. So it can't simply be someone who decides that they've found a nice place to park and they turn the application in. That would be the same as someone deciding that they wanted to build a little house in your front yard because they thought it was a nice place to build a little house. In terms of truck traffic, obviously the roads are public, and as long as they are rated for that size of a truck, then I don't believe there's anything that could be done to prohibit trucks driving on streets. And large trucks, whether they're delivery trucks or moving trucks, will pull in and out of residential neighborhoods. In the industrial parks, there's already a significant amount of truck traffic. And if I think about the Pioneer Industrial Park, there are several very large truck users that have heavy vehicles running in and out of there all the time. My guess, based upon the number of complaints that we've received about overnight truck parking, is that it would be a very incremental increase in the total number of trucks that are already on those streets. So I don't anticipate any negative impact to the public infrastructure.
And just to make sure our constituents understand, in the 5th District, which one of the main arteries that trucks are allowed to be on? We're talking about Allen Road, Pioneer Parkway, Route 6, obviously. What else are the exit from that area?
I'm a little out of my depth here, but I think certainly all of the streets that you mentioned. I'm trying to think of other locations in town where absolutely War Memorial. I mean, these are all of the major streets. There are locations where you'll see a sign that will say Class 2 vehicles prohibited, but it's usually over bridges that are not designed to carry that type of weight. But almost any street in town should be able to carry a truck.
So we should never see those trucks going around the roundabouts or in the neighborhood, correct?
No, I think the trucks certainly could go. I mean, the roundabouts were designed to accommodate semi-trucks, so they can get around the roundabouts. And if it's a truck that is, if it's a moving truck, if someone is moving to town, then the truck has to get into residential neighborhoods somehow. So I don't imagine there would ever be a significant amount of truck traffic, but there will be some truck traffic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And Councilmember Riggenbach next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And for those listening at home that are scratching their heads about the special use and permitted use and whatnot, the special use in these commercial districts, which includes the shopping centers that we've been talking about, Sterling Bazaar, Sheridan Village, Junction City, those do truly butt up against neighborhoods. And that is exactly why Councilwoman Jensen brought this request that the use in the commercial districts be a special use. So there will be a public hearing process, a chance for the residents to weigh in on it. So by us approving this, which allows the truck parking in these certain areas, there's quite a process to go through, and it will not happen in any of the shopping centers without a further step, which includes full public input. So I just want to make that clear if anybody's starting to get nervous at home listening to this. So I think this is a great compromise, and as Councilman Graham said, it's something that's really long overdue. So thank you.
Thank you. I have Councilman Montalongo next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just have a couple questions here about this. So I already know, like, there's one area on here along Sterling I get multiple calls on all the time. It so happens to be in the red, and it's probably where the area just south of Forest Hills on Sterling. It's just a small area, but that's one area that I get a lot of calls on. So my question is, do we want to remove some of these red areas now, or just let the process take its place? Because I'd probably pick that, at least that one, if not another 2 or 3 off the map right now. My second question, also, there's an area on Big Hollow. I'm not sure quite where that's at. It looks like it's along that blue line there. If you're taking a look at it, I'm not even sure why that would be commercial, or the C2.
The area on Big Hollow is, you wouldn't really think of it as a large-scale commercial. It was probably zoned that way many years ago. I think there's maybe an animal hospital in that area. It's on a hillside and really not very developable. So it may look like a large red splotch on the map, but it's really a pretty small size parcel. In terms of removing any of the C2 districts, that's really something that can't be done. With zoning, it's either all of the zoning districts that are the same, all of the C2 districts have to be treated in the same manner. So that's why with a special use, if someone came in and wanted to have truck parking at a C2 location where it was clearly inappropriate because either the parcel is too small, it's too close to residential, if there are trucks parked there, then the customers can't get in, then that would absolutely be grounds for the council to vote to deny that location. So that would be the process to go through, where everyone still has an opportunity to submit the application, but given appropriate grounds, it can be denied.
Okay, I understand. Part of it will be limitations on the number. Let's say they have 100 parking spots. We're going to say X amount of parking spots will be allowed, or is it going to turn into an Airbnb for trucks if we're not careful? Because I can see the landowners wanting to make money, and if this is a chance for them to make money overnight, why wouldn't they?
So the base requirement is no more than 5. So that's where it starts. So if it's one of the industrial districts and it comes to the administrative review, we can't provide a waiver. It's only 5. In the C2 districts, because it's a special use, as you all know, that gives the council the ability to provide a waiver either up or down. So you could potentially say, this site is too small for 5, and we will only approve it for 2, or alternatively, you could say the site is large enough to accommodate 10, and that's what the property owner is asking for, and you could allow that as a waiver. But that, again, is through the special use process. The baseline is 5, no more than 5.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Round 2, Councilman Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, I believe I hit my button to desist.
Okay, you're still in round 1 then. Round 2, Councilman Gribb.
Director Black, devil is in more details, I think. Let's just say the council has a petitioner that comes forward and wants to be able to probably rent out space, who knows, at one of our commercial centers. And the council, in its infinite wisdom, gives a special use. But a future council doesn't think that's appropriate anymore, or the same sitting council does. Can we get rid of the special use or revoke it?
Councilman, a special use can only be revoked if there's some violation of that special use. If the property owner continues to operate under the approval that was given, they can have that forever. But if, for example, if they're allowed 5 trucks and they have 7 trucks parked there all the time, then that would be grounds to revoke the special use.
This council then will bind future councils. If we give the special use permit for, let's say, Sterling Bazaar to have no more than 2 semis, I'm just picking that out, it could be any of them. we can't revoke it unless there's some infraction, something that would be detrimental to the neighborhood. And I don't even know what that would be, since it's probably not being codified. We have to be careful what we're getting into. As we try to bring some semblance of order to this whole issue here, I just think the council needs to think about this carefully, especially if we're asked to do this in some of our commercial areas, the precedent we're establishing. Because it's almost like it's an ownership right. Right?
Well, I mean, a special use, as with any special use, whether it's a shopping center or a house, a place of worship within a residential area, that is a decision that a council makes that does bind future councils. And I mean, a council can't say the previous council approved a church at this location. We don't want the church there anymore, so they have to move. And this is no different than any other special use process.
I just think that that's important for us to all recognize as we try to bring some order to what's been chaos, because up to now we've been very reactive. Where they've been parking in a place that's right next to a neighborhood. We're going out and we just don't really have a place to suggest where they could go. But on the other hand, we're creating one hell of a precedent. Once we get a petitioner coming forward and we get a vote of 6 on this, or whatever the majority is, we better be sure of our ground that we want it to be at that location. And I'm more sure of my ground with the I, but I'm not so sure about the C's. But I understand what my colleague was trying to do, because what we were trying to identify as much as possible with this map, correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Jensen, was we wanted to see exactly what we were getting into, where these C areas were, and what the adjacency aspect was in terms of neighborhoods. So, but there's nothing pending tonight other than approving this as it is. And there are some more bites that can be taken at the apple as we move down the road. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm seeing no more lights. We have a motion and a second to approve Ordinance C. If there are no further items for discussion, please cast your ballots. C. Motion passes unanimously. Madam Clerk.
We are at unfinished business.
Any unfinished business to come before the City Council this evening? Unfinished. Councilmember Moore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like for Stacy Peterson, if she's still here, to come up and talk to us about our new communication vehicle that will be seen on Channel 22. We've determined some hours that the system will be providing information to the public to go around some of the current programming that's already on Channel 22. So, Stacey, if you can give us just a brief overview and when we should start seeing this on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Moore and members of the council and Mayor Ardis. As you know, we've been working on this public access digital signage program at the urgent urging of Councilwoman Moore. She's been very patient with us as we've worked through technical difficulties. And this signage is broadcast on our regular Channel 22, public access, that's free to all television viewers. It is active now, actually, and we have it viewing in large blocks. So Monday through Friday, you'll see it early morning hours, and then afternoon 3 to 5, and then Wednesday through Friday, I believe it's at night between 9 and 11. And then we also have varied hours on the weekend. It was critical that we didn't interrupt the already scheduled programming that our public access has with council meetings, school board meetings, and other city meetings. But it is cutting into the arts programming that's the default when we don't have regular programmatic activities. But it's up. If anybody sees it, it shows current events, meetings that are scheduled. It's a link to our Twitter feed, which will show a lot of our constant updates that we always have. It links to the news and events portion of our website, so any of our press releases that go out come up on that too. So, and if anybody has any suggestions, they can find me in the city manager's office.
Thank
Stacy. So I want to take this time to thank Stacy for taking up the challenge of trying to get this done. For the last 4 or 5 years, I've been trying to bring the city of Peoria into the 21st century to allow our residents, who many are not on social media, they don't have computers, but they do have television. And this will allow us to communicate to our residents things that are going on within our city, when there are meetings that are happening, when there's programs that may come out where there's funding for residents to obtain from the city. Anything that's happening that we want to make sure that we're conveying when we get into the budget season, when we're going to set up those dates and times when there will be budget meetings, that'll be out there. And as Stacy indicated, it'll be running from 4 a.m. in the morning to 9 a.m. in the morning, Monday through Friday, and then 3 to 5 in the afternoon. So the purpose wasn't to have this run 24/7. There are times when people are actually looking for information. You're looking at the news in the morning, you're looking at the early news in the afternoon, and then it also runs on Saturday and Sunday so you can prepare for what's coming up the following week. So I want to thank you and all the city staff that has been working for the last few years, because I've been nitpicking at you to get this done, because it is so important that we're communicating what we're doing to our residents. So thank you, Stacy.
Any additional unfinished business tonight? Unfinished? Councilman Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Manager, I wonder if you could give us an update on Granicus and our contract.
Thank you, Councilman. Yes, at your request, we had reached out to Granicus and asked them if we could reduce the contract increase that was slated at 7% annually for the next 2 years after this year. They agreed to a reduction in that to a 3% increase cost escalator, which will save us about $3,800 over the life of that contract. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Mr. Manager.
You bet.
Further unfinished? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
We're at new business.
Any new business to come before the council? New business, Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, today is February the 25th, and it is only a few days left of February, which is Black History Month. And there's been a lot of activity going on in the community, a lot of things on television you've seen to recognize the citizens who have contributed so much, not only to our city, but to our nation during Black History Month. And one of those citizens that I learned about some years ago when reading Dr. Romeo B. Garrett's book, The Negro in Peoria, where he chronicled a lot of what happened with African Americans living here, the trials and tribulations they had, the struggles they had, from the stories of not being able to be a student, to be able to be a student on Bradley campus, but not be able to stay on Bradley campus and had to be off campus before dark and having to live someplace else, to the story of the first African-American firefighter that was hired by the city of Peoria in the fire department by the name of Eddie Gaines. Eddie Gaines was hired to the city of Peoria Fire Department in 1957. And one of the stories you will read in Dr. Garrett's book was a story that was told about one of the experiences that this firefighter had when getting ready to go to a fire, and you've seen on the TV, and I'm sure it's overly shown on television, where they drop into their boots off the pole, and I'm not sure if they do that now, but in this particular instance, when his feet hit his boots were wet on the inside, and they were inside the building, and it wasn't raining inside the building. And to put it the way my husband put it, other firefighters who were not African American decided to use the bathroom in his boots. And so when he put his feet in his boots were wet. And so those are the kind of indignities that he had to suffer in order for the firefighters who are of minority lineage, who are on Peoria's firefighting team today, men and women. And so in recognition of his efforts, of his being a trailblazer, and that this is not 1957 anymore. Times have changed. We've come a long way. We have a long way yet to go. But I would like to have the city manager, if you would look into what it would take for us to name our new Southside Fire Station in honor of firefighter Eddie Gaines. I would greatly appreciate that. It would be a fitting end to the end of Black History Month, and it would be a fitting tribute to a firefighter who blazed a trail and suffered so much, but he hung in there. And it's something that our kids today, no matter who the kid is, we have a lot of kids out here going through a lot of concerns, especially in the South Side. That's one of the reasons why Mr. Booth has the wraparound center at Tree Wind, because there's a lot that is happening to our children socially and emotionally. And I think it would be such a beautiful tribute for those kids to go by that brand new fire station with solar panels on the top of it, and be proud of someone that looked like them, that went through so much, but hung in there and was successful. So, Mr. City Manager, how long would it be for you to come back and let us know if that's something we can do for our new fire station on the south side?
I think that we can go back to you at our next meeting and give you a report back on that.
Thank you so much. And at that time, I hope that my colleagues around the Horseshoe would be so inclined to vote in favor of renaming that station or naming that station after firefighter Eddie Gaines. Thank you.
I had Councilmember Jensen next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. City Manager, based on what was reported in the last 2 days about the statewide tax revenues that have come in due to the cannabis sales in the first month, I was wondering if you may not be prepared to report on it tonight, if you could give us a report back on what the city's revenue was.
So at this point in time, there's no 3% local cannabis tax that's been imposed. That doesn't start till July 1st. So it would only be the city's portion of the sales taxes that were sold on the recreational cannabis. And I don't know if the state is reporting that out by jurisdiction yet, but we'll look into it and see what we can come up with.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional new business this evening? New business. Just a quick note out. I think on behalf of the council and staff, we'd like to express our condolences to Councilmember Euler, whose mother passed recently, and let him know that he's in our thoughts and prayers. Madam Clerk.
We're at citizens' opportunity to address the city council.
We're at citizens to address. We just need your name for the record, please. We have a 5-minute speaking limit. Up first is Kristen Meyercord.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Krista Meyercord. I'm a proud resident of the East Bluff here in Peoria. Unfortunately, Mr. Riggenbach just walked out of the room. I wanted to thank him personally for being such a visible presence in our neighborhood, although he does not live in it. He is our district person. I also wanted to bring attention that I feel it is very important for you to understand the needs of these neighborhoods and these communities that are going through some suffering right now, that you immerse yourself in the community. You need to get out there and understand the people, get to know the people one-on-one, whether it be citizens or people that are running the city, for example, leaders in the neighborhood. You need to do this. I've urged in the past for police to please get out of their cars and walk the streets and get to know the people. It's very important because that respect will be reciprocated. One of the other reasons that I'm standing up here today is for another East Bluff resident, and that is one name that you've heard many times from me before, and that's Alexis Scott. Her family still resides just a few blocks away from me. She's been missing now for 2.5 years, which is completely unacceptable. We will not let the city forget her. She is the reason that we put together Remember Her Peoria. And I want to thank Mrs. Moore and Mr. Riggenbach, the only two council people I saw down there that came out in support of our project. We put a lot of work into that. That is at 1311 Southwest Adams at Pecan. It showcases for the past 25 years the women, all the females and children who have been murdered here in the city of Peoria and Peoria County. We thought we would maybe have 40 or 50 dresses. We ended up with close to 100, and we know that's still not the total count. That is an issue. That is a large issue, and many of these were not solved. That's another big issue. And I want to address the issue also that the Peoria Police Department does not have an active cold case department. I was told that the only time when these cases are cold that they are looked into is when there's a lull in shootings. Well, thank God we have a lull in shootings at the moment, but that's not fair to these families that don't have closure. Alexis's family needs closure. There's 94 other women up on that fence down there represented that need closure. And I'm just hoping and praying now, especially for Alexis's family, that with the new detective on the case, that some things will be looked into, leads that were given will actually be followed. I invite all of you, if you have not been down there to see the installment yet, to please come down. Saturday will be the last day that it will be up. And I can almost promise you that there is someone from each and every one of your districts who is represented down there. And it is unsatisfactory that we have such a high rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, before we go to the next citizen, I neglected to mention under new business, and I think this, normally I'd let it go till the next meeting, but I think that our constituents would like to see the information. Today the council received several really good informational pieces on the coronavirus. It was sent over to the council today from Fire Chief. Really good information. It talks about what we're doing here. It talks about preparations, actions that can be taken if someone shows those symptoms. And I just wanted to make sure the public knew that that information would be up on our website. Actually, it is up on our website right now, so they can access that under news and events or social media. And I apologize that I forgot to get that in under new business. Next up, we have Stephen Morris.
Honorable members of the Peoria City Council, I want to express my deepest gratitude again to you all today for your attention. I also want to testify to my humble submission to your role as God's ordained civil magistrates with the duty to preserve justice and to work to punish evil and uphold justice in our city. My name is Steve Morris. I'm still a pastor at Providence Church. Thank you for your attention today. Today we've heard discussion and debate in these chambers on significant and impactful matters for our city regarding serving alcohol in public movie theaters, usage regulations for public parking of semi-trucks, and even the very real challenges historically of being Negro growing up in Peoria. My purpose in coming before you this day is to be a witness of a matter which is even more significant and impactful. We seek to be the voice for all of our fatherless preborn neighbors in our city and state, regardless of their race or ethnic origin or economic status, who are still being dismembered or poisoned or chemically burned daily under your watch and jurisdiction without any due process, and for no crime committed by them except that their continued existence represents an inconvenience or difficult life circumstance to one or both of their biological parents. But taking the life of an innocent human being in the womb is against God's fundamental command to not murder. And I'm sure there are still those of you who believe in the validity of the Ten Commandments. I'm hoping that some of you still have some moral courage also. Roe versus Wade is not a law. The Supreme Court of the United States has not been given the duty or the power to legislate according to either our nation's or state's founding documents. Roe v. Wade is a fundamentally flawed and erring court opinion without any semblance of scientific, logical, or legal basis. You're not legally bound by it, regardless of the voices shouting to the contrary. Roe v. Wade was based upon the biologically and demonstrably absurd premise that what is in the womb of a mother is merely, quote, potential human life. We know as a fact of revelation and as a biological and scientific fact that at the very moment of our conception, all of the biological components of you and me and every human being are fully present. And I think you know this too. The only difference is one of degree, size, level of development, environment, and degree of dependence. So, honorable representatives of justice around this shoehorn, murder is legally defined as taking human life in an unjustified manner with malice aforethought. Yet this is taking place under your watch, under your jurisdiction. And it is your responsibility to uphold justice for our preborn neighbors and to interpose by putting an immediate end to this massacre of innocents. This is not merely, and please hear me, this is not merely a partisan issue. This is the premier issue of justice before you all, this day and every day, until you do your duty to stand between these defenseless human beings and their attackers. Honorable representatives, you have a duty to not allow people to kill human beings in our city, and you all know this. This applies no less for those who are small, still developing, or located in the safe sanctuary of their mother's womb, and who are dependent on their mothers. If we rationalize killing because they're small, do we also abate the punishment for the father who murders his small 2-year-old? Do we also cease to uphold justice to the 9-year-old who is not fully developed? Do we allow humans to kill other humans simply because of where they happen to be located? Are we going to cease upholding justice for the elderly and the handicapped simply because they are dependent on others for their lives? Before this day is over, in this state, dozens of baby human beings will have had their arms torn from their sockets, their legs ripped from their bodies, or they'll be disemboweled and have their heads crushed. That's what abortion is. Here in Peoria, Planned Parenthood is still distributing the morning after pill and abortifacients to chemically burn babies in the womb and induce premature delivery of aborted human babies. It's graphic, I know, but it's true. This is being done under your watch and the watch of our state legislators. And you will all be held accountable before God for not acting if you refuse to stand up for truth and righteousness to defend the lives of the innocent by declaring the area under your jurisdiction, the city of Peoria, to be a sanctuary city for all of life, including the life of the unborn. Our sincere offer to pick up the tab for your meal at a restaurant of your choice, if you'll simply sit and talk with us about this further, and other local concerned Christian citizens, still stands. Or better yet, the offer is open. Come visit us some Sunday morning or dine with us at Providence Church on some Sunday afternoon or Wednesday evening. We would be delighted to host you. Thank you for your time.
Up next, we have Jody Smith Brown.
Thank you. That was a little heavy, so I need like a moment to breathe because I didn't expect to hear that from the pastor before I came up. So bear with me for a moment. My name is Jody Smith Brown. I live in the Pride of the City neighborhood. For those of you who are not familiar, that is the neighborhood that rests between Nebraska, Interstate 74, Peoria High's campus, and Knoxville Avenue. I want you to think about some numbers. 885. You deal with numbers all day, manager, right? 885. The other one I want you to think about is 262. And the last one, 6,629. Not expect to come here this evening. I feel very uncomfortable standing here, but I felt that I had to. 885 days ago, Alexis Scott, who I don't know, went missing from my neighborhood. I live 262 feet from where she was last seen. Her mother has been working diligently to resolve and get answers. She's pushed and she's pressed and she's probably offended. And I have to tell you that I stand before you with no intention on offending anyone in this chamber nor anyone in this community. I love this community. I love my family. I'm a mother, a daughter. I cannot fathom having to deal with what the Scott family has endured. I cannot fathom to deal with what the police department has endured. I can't fathom what you endure every day. But what I do know is that I owe the family, my community, owes the family a public apology because I don't feel we as a community have done enough. I do believe, despite what others might believe, including April, who's probably listening, that the police have done everything they can. I believe within the resources that we have, they're doing their best. But I don't believe we as a community are doing our best. And today, for whatever reason, I felt led to get up, take my grandkids to school, came back home, and I was studying Alexis Scott's case. Why? I have no idea. It's super random. I was actually staying in a home out on Stratford, which happens to be the home where Mr. Kelly's parents used to live. So I'm sitting up in the loft, Mr. Kelly, which I'm sure you can imagine. It's a beautiful home on Stratford. And I'm reading, and I was struck. For this case, they're trying to raise funds. Why? To resolve it. Whether that's hiring a private investigator or getting someone to snitch. I mean, sometimes money will make people talk. We know this. And they've only raised $627. I am ashamed by that. I know people who spend more than that on their water and coffee in a year. And we're talking about someone's child. And so I'm pleading with this community. I'm pleading with you. You are people of influence. Some of you are people of great affluence. We have the same throughout our community. I'm just asking that everyone take a moment and imagine what that would feel like to have unanswered questions regarding a loved one who was missing, and to take the time to put $1 into the official Missing Alexis Camry Scott GoFundMe page. Because that's the least we can do. We need to show this family that we care. We need to show this family that we love them, that we're a great community to be a part of. So I thank you for your time. I thank you for all that you do in our community. I know many of you go way above and beyond, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm asking the other part of our community, the greater community, step up like I saw you step up when Washington was struck by a tornado. This family has been struck by a tornado. Washington stepped up. People from all over the country came forward and gave more water than we can imagine, and money that they didn't know they didn't even know what to do with all that money. So give $1. Churches step up. Neighborhoods step up. People step up. Do something. So thank you.
Next, I have Robert Johnson.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Robert Johnson. Excuse me. I'm speaking on not Park District-related information today, but I am talking from where I live at, on the south side of Peoria. And some of my residents here that are with us here tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of the Southside Community for Change, which is an accumulation of several neighborhood associations on the south side who all combined to one. And we are concerned about well, we already understand now that the application has been withdrawn. The craft growers that was coming in on Southwest Adams at 4040 Southwest Adams, we had a great concern about that when they were deciding to come into the south side of Peoria, which is about 5.5 blocks from my house. And the neighbors were really in an uproar because no one talked to us, no one came to us, no one even talked with us about the situation. Our own first district councilman, she didn't even have any information on it when she came and spoke to us. We thought that was very disrespectful. We didn't know what the particulars was before we found out that it went to zoning. A majority of the members came tonight. We didn't get the word out. We did get the word out to some that this had been pulled, so some decided not to come. Those that did come didn't have the information yet. But we just wanted to let the council know that the south side of Peoria, those citizens are concerned about what come in our neighborhood. For one thing, I know that it is a law now, and please don't forget, we do not even have a grocery store there. We're in a food desert. We have a lot of concerns. There's a lot of problems already on the south side of Peoria, as some of you may well know. So just wanted to say, please in the future, to consider the residents there, because those type of individual places that are coming, the craft growers and the dispensers, those of us that live there have a strong concern about that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Benjamin Howsam.
Thank you, members of the City Council, Mayor Ardis, for the opportunity to address you this evening. My name is Ben Howsam, and I'm here as a witness. I am not here because I wish to hear myself speak, nor am I here because I desire for others to see me speak. I'm here because I do believe that you have not just the ability, but the duty to end the barbaric practice of abortion in this city. I'm not here to tell you about how much abortion harms women, though it does. I'm not here to tell you of the long-term community-wide repercussions of abortion, though there are. I'm not even here to compare it to past atrocities, though of course I could. I'm here tonight in front of this body because you have it within your means to end abortion in this city. Beyond the means, though, you bear the responsibility. God, the supreme Lord and King of all the world, has ordained civil magistrates to be, under him, over the people, for his own glory and the public good, and to this end has armed them with the power of the sword for the defense and encouragement of them that are good and for the punishment of evildoers. And so here I am, not to beg and plead, but to remind each of you of your duties. And I'm here because it is the duty of the people to pray for magistrates, to honor their persons, to pay them tribute and other dues, to obey their lawful commands, and to be subject to their authority. And so I do pray for you. In my home and at worship services, I pray for each of you. And so it is I am here because it is my duty, just as it is your duty to see to the protection of the innocent. It is my duty to exhort you to the defense of the good. To this end, I call on the members of this body to declare by statute a ban on abortion within this city. I thank you for your time, and I pray that you will do that which is good.
Up next, we have Darcy Cady.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Darcy Cady, and I'm a peer representative of the Alexis Camry Scott campaign. I've been with the ACS campaign since December of 2017 and have been attending city council meetings on Alexis' behalf for roughly 2 years now. And I am left with more questions than answers, as I believe all of us in the community are, specifically Alexis' family. Before I ask any questions, I would like to explain to the community and to all of you as city council members and mayor what the ACS campaign has done in order to achieve justice, not only for Alexis, but even others as well. Alexis Camry Scott went missing on September 23rd, 2017 from 125 Richmond Avenue in Peoria, Illinois. From that day forward, the online Facebook page known as the Alexis Camry Scott campaign was created. T-shirts, flyers, yard signs, and car decals were made and sold to create awareness as well as to raise money for any information leading to her location. Multiple city council meetings have been attended, multiple marches have also been held, and even a press conference was requested to raise awareness about Alexis being missing and for her safe return. The ACS campaign has also been involved in public service projects such as within the community, helping victims of domestic violence leave their abusers and start again, helping advocate for many other missing individuals, most notably Janie Sellers and Mark Bohanna, and even being the inspiration for the local art installation, as Kristen said, Remember Her, Peoria. Alexis' story has been told many times in PJ Star, featured on various crime investigation YouTube channels, and even on a daytime television show, with a special dedicated to Alexis currently in the works. People care. Our community has spoken with their actions and showed that they believe Alexis Camry Scott deserves justice, and yet we are here without any. The most overwhelming question I have from everything I've just stated is how much action does a community have to take in order for those in power to follow suit? Because Alexis may be one story of one individual, but it echoes the experiences of literally hundreds of women and girls in our community in Peoria, Illinois. I ask that you simply look at the statistics from the Center for Prevention of Abuse, and you'll find the facts reflected in the data that they share. My final questions are this. What is the status of the bleached and burned clothing and hair found at Banner Marsh on an ACS campaign search that search canines alerted to? Has it been tested for any DNA evidence, or is that even possible given the status of the clothing due to exposure? And finally, what further action would the Peoria Police Department and City Council like to see from the ACS campaign? We have a social media page with the following 5,000 strong, and we actively mobilize locally in the community in order to seek justice for Alexis and to actively help others. All we ask is that those in positions of power do the same. Thank you.
Madam Clerk?
We do not have an executive session, and so we would be at adjournment.
Motion to adjourn by Councilmember Sear, seconded by Councilmember Ali. Please cast your ballots. That motion passes unanimously. We'd like to thank Kathy Reinerson and her listening audience at WCBU, as well as Cable Channel 22, and this evening's meeting is adjourned.